What is happening, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Why Did I Buy a Mini Truck? It might look a little hectic right now, but we went ahead and got a lot done earlier this week, so I'm going to fill you guys in on some of the stuff that we've done and some of the stuff that we are going to be doing this weekend. So one of the very first things I did was I cannibalized our old engine harness that used to go into this truck. So inside there is all good factory color wiring, every connector, every plug, every relay, every junction block, anything that could come off the harness that wasn't damaged or something I could use, I went ahead and saved. So this harness right here is the harness that came out of our black donor single cab. Now this harness is, 30 something years old. So it's important, we're just going through this and pretty much relooming everything, making sure it looks good, checking the condition of the wires. A lot of this harness hasn't moved in, 30 plus years. So sometimes the sheathing on these factory wires, they have a tendency to dry out, crack, and get brittle, especially spots that are exposed to the elements, like the junction here that goes from here back, or even those spots that go on the outer part of the fender over here, and of course the parts that are in the engine bay. So in that last video, I went ahead and went through this harness right here. Now this harness runs to the starter, alternator, and then back to the transmission. So this harness right here has been cleared up. I made sure everything looks good. We're going to clean the connectors, and then that will be ready to be resheathed. This is the original power wire right here. We're not going to be running it because we are going to be running our own power wire from the starter back to our battery. So we were able to get it out of that harness, which really freed up the flexibility a lot. The goal with the harness isn't to go crazy. We're just really inspecting the condition of the wiring and giving it some new sheathing, and just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. There are some things on here that we will be kind of cleaning up, but I'm not sure if we're going to go through and delete a bunch of stuff. That's not really what I want to do. I'd like this harness to be as close to OEM as possible. The only real differences here is that we're going to have a Deutsch connector here, which will separate the entire front lighting portion of the truck and the engine bay harness. That'll be it. So you'll have the starter alternator harness, you'll have the harness that has its own connector for all of the engine stuff, then you'll have another harness that has all of its connectors for the front lights. They're all going to join down here, and then you'll have the dash harness, which will be all factory, and then you'll have all the factory wires that run back here, and then all the wires that run into the ECU, and then you'll have the factory junction here that goes underneath the truck. It runs back to the taillight harness and the fuel pump setup back there. So that will all be its own OEM style, just nice and cleaned up. So really the only modification we're doing here are that. We are going to be tucking in this relay box inside, but that's just because that's where I want to put it. It's not really a necessity. I just think it'll clean up the bay if we don't have that box just sitting on the side there. Now, once we get all the factory wiring cleaned up and we get it put in, we're going to go ahead and hook a battery up. We're going to verify that the cluster is functioning, that the headlights and taillights are all working, that our interior lights will be working. And in order to substitute some of that, we do have some taillights here. These are the ones that came on the truck. They're just some cheaper LED ones. We're going to use those to verify our taillights work. For the turn signals, I have some aftermarket strips here that we're going to use. Unless there is a socket, then I'll just leave the socket. But for the headlights, the same thing. We'll just hook up. I think I have some fog lights somewhere. We'll just hook them up to make sure they work. I don't want to go bust out all the new stuff, just to make sure our components are working properly, since we're not ready to get them put back on the truck yet. And then once this main harness is done, we can then build our auxiliary harness and our auxiliary fuse panel to go ahead and do the wiring for the stuff like our compressors, our switch panel, for our PSI gauges for each of the bags, any accessories that we have, any extra lighting we have, all of that jazz will be run through that auxiliary panel. And then this way that really isolates any aftermarket stuff we're doing, and there'll be plenty of room in there to add things if somebody wants to add stuff. It'll be really great for them to not have to worry about tapping into the factory harness. I really hate when aftermarket stuff is just kind of buried in OEM stuff. I know a lot of the time it's unavoidable, but most of the time the easiest route is to just give it its own distribution block or its own fuse block. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get you guys on the GoPro. We are going to get this harness up on that table. We're going to start kind of getting things ready. We are going to be cutting off that and extending the wires for that relay block, and then we are also going to kind of start getting some things mocked up in here, and then finally wrapping it so we have all of the wrap and all of the old sheathing from the other harness. I was able to salvage all of it. A lot of that stuff's already cut to the lengths we need, which is fantastic. We do have some extras. I do have some OEM here, and we also have some corrugated stuff for areas that might be a little rougher on the harness. However, I do also have a full grommet kit. So a lot of the areas where the harness is going to be running through, and a lot of the spots where our airlines are going to be running through, all of those are going to be protected with a nice rubber grommet. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I hope you guys enjoy. So I wanted to put this clip in really quick before we actually get into the time lapse, but this is the section we're going to be working on right now. This section here runs, this part is right here, and this is what runs out. So this will run out here, so you can see this one. We don't use this, so we'll probably cut this out and tuck it away. Right here we have, this is our wiper plug. This one right here is going to be the connector right underneath our air box. This one here is our injector harness, and then this runs, you know, all the way over on the other side of the engine to some coils. And then here we have, like, this is our main starter relay. These would usually go up to the battery, so these can actually get flipped back. This connector here and this connector here, these run to our alternator and starter harness. And we do have new fusible links for these. These are just on there temporarily. Then this is like the passenger side turn signal and headlights and stuff. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to split this harness out. The lighting will all be on its own Deutsch connector. The stuff for the starter and alternator will kind of probably be either extended over here, or they're going to be extended here to kind of tuck, and they'll also be on their own connector. And then all of this injector harness will be on its own connector, and then so will the wiper and this other one. So there'll be like 4 plugs, which sounds like a lot, but really it'll be nice to be able to isolate everything in the harness. So I just want to show you guys kind of what we're working on before we get started, and you'll kind of see the process as we go through it. So enjoy. Alrighty, so I got the loom all separated, and then what I went ahead and did was I pinned out these 4 Deutsch pin connectors. So I have them all labeled D1 through 4. Now that is just because if there are multiples that have the same size connector, I want it to not be able to be plugged in by accident to the wrong one. So we're gonna have them labeled, but also we're alternating, you know, so if we have another 4-prong that comes through here, we're gonna make the 4-prong on the big harness side a female, so that there's no way to kind of mix them up. So I also went ahead and got this side of the loom all done. So these are also labeled 1 through 4. Now they have all the corresponding wires, and they all plug in here, which is great. So we went ahead and got this kind of all cleaned up through here. Now this harness that I have in my hand is the engine harness. So this is going to control things like the injectors, all of the connectors over here by the throttle body, our distributor, and I believe a couple of these vacuum sensors. So basically everything here on the top of the engine is going to be controlled by this harness right here. Now this harness here is all separated from the main harness, which is sitting over here on the ground. Now this is a lot of stuff that just stays inside of the cab. Over here where you kind of see those 2 rubber grommets, that's other wiring that runs outside, but we'll be doing the same thing pretty much that we're doing on this side to this side over here. However, it'll only really be 1 or 2 plugs, so that'll be really great. Now that we have this portion of the harness taken off, I'm going to go ahead and test fit it on here and kind of show you guys how it's going to route. We may tuck it, we may not tuck it, but whatever we decide to do, it'll still look way cleaner than it did with the original harness, and we're not going to have a bunch of stuff here on the side of the fender. All right, so now I've got the harness kind of laid out in here so you can see where it's going to go. Now I am considering tucking this harness just because we now have enough room and length to do everything we need to. So here you can kind of see some of the work we've done. So we have our injector loom harness all set up here. We have our ground. Now unfortunately all I had left was this blue underneath this black coating is a fiberglass heat resistant covering, like a sheath. So I slipped it over there and then I put this on. Unfortunately you can still kind of see it, but that's just because the ground goes over here and everything's going to be pretty hot. So I want to make sure that those grounds don't get too hot and that it doesn't degrade the wiring. We have everything kind of plugged in. We are finishing up this portion of the loom right now, but we can kind of see how everything kind of routes. And then inside of here, this is where our extended harness lives with our Deutsch pin connectors. So we have D1 through 4, and this just kind of lets us know which connectors we have, since there might be multiple of the same size, so we'll kind of go through that, but I wanted to alternate them. So we're gonna go ahead and get this back out, finish that up right there, and I think then we can go ahead and tuck the harness. All right, so now that we got that other harness kind of run, what we have left to do in here is pretty simple. We have our wiper motor plug, which is right here. So we are going to be extending this just like we did the other ones. It'll be on a plug. However, we're going to try to tie it in with the plug for the light harness. And then after that, we'll go ahead and extend this main starter relay with this box here, which is the other fuse and relay box. And those will be inside the cab. And then we're going to keep our ground right here, pretty close to here anyway. This just goes on the fender. We are going to be updating all the grounds anyway, brand new grounds from the block to the frame and to the chassis. And then in the back, we're going to have a brand new ground to the frame, to the chassis, and then also to the transmission. So pretty easy. We're going to go over all of them. Good solid grounds are important. So that'll leave us pretty much with these 3 wires here, or 3 connectors I should say. These 3 connectors here plug into our starter and alternator harness. So what we're going to do is get the rest of this harness modified, and then we're going to want to make sure that these here reach our other harness. Now this one here, you might be asking yourself, hey, why, what about this one? Well, these are actually our fusible link ones, and I'm going to try to get these back all the way back in the harness, so that we can actually run them just to our battery, so we don't have to run some kind of positive post or anything. Originally what I was thinking about doing was somewhere down here running just a lug, like a terminal that I could hook up other positive wires to, and then we could run them inside. But if we can get those, because normally those fusible links, they sit right about here. Since your battery is going to be right here, that's also where like the factory starter wire runs to. They all kind of run this way, so we're basically shifting everything to run back and then inside. So hopefully we can get those far enough back into here that we can extend them just a short ways to the battery and be totally good to go. So I'm gonna get jumping on the rest of this loom. I'll put a little update in here, and then we're probably gonna wrap up this part of our video series for our electrical. I think it's gonna be at least 2 videos of just grinding on this and getting it knocked out. Honestly, I might not even film all of it unless somebody has like some specific questions. I will be taking a bunch of photos. Everything will be labeled, so if you guys have any issues with your trucks, as long as you have the KA24E, I can kind of walk you through what I did, or where certain connectors go and where certain wires run, considering we have 2 complete harnesses here and are rebuilding 1 all the way through. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I'm gonna go ahead and get probably a couple more clips in here as we move along, but I just want to say thank you to everybody. I mean, we're at like 142 subscribers. That's wild, dude. Like overnight I've gotten like 800 views on the wide body fitting for the King Cab, so I thought that was really cool. And you know, I'm really excited to move on. I mean, that's definitely a motivator, so I appreciate everybody. So I hope you guys enjoy these following clips. All right, so I got the headlight harness all separated from the main harness over there, and I was able to get everything all pinned out and reloomed. So we have a nice new loom here. All the wires are in good condition. And I went ahead and left the end here unfinished. Now this is something we can go back through and button up once we're done running the rest of the harness and we actually put power to this. But I'm leaving these open because I know that the headlight is going to land right about here, and we're going to be running this harness along the outside of the fender here. We're going to use some grapple style zip ties. Basically they have like a little insert that will pop into one of these little holes here and it'll hold it. But I want to leave these undone because I'm not 100% sure yet where we're going to land our turn signals. Like, I know our turn signal is going to be like right about here somewhere, but we have a running light in here, and then we also have what I believe is a horn wire. So what I want to do is get this all hooked up. I want to figure out what we're going to do for our front lighting, because we are going to have like our side markers and we're going to have our headlights where they normally are, but we're not going to have that OE style front bumper, so we're not going to be able to put our turn signals in there. So what I'd like to do is maybe switch our turn signals to our side marker lights, and then use our side marker lights maybe for something special on the front end. So we'll definitely have to see how that turns out. So this harness is all done. The next thing we have to do over here is we need to finish separating our fuse panel, and I'll show you what we got going on. So over here on the main harness, we were able to get a lot of stuff done. So I was able to get this relay and holder back inside the cab without having to extend anything. I was also able to pull back 1/2 of our fusible links. So this, we're still going to have to extend the wiring for this one and the other one that's over there, just so it can reach our battery. But that's not really that big a deal. I was also able to extend this relay box with a couple extra fuses in it into the cab with only having to extend 1 ground wire, which was very cool. This will sit somewhere inside of there. And then over here, what we have left is we have these 3 wires that plug in to the main starter alternator harness. Now everything else is extended out. You know, we do have to deal with our wiper plug. This is the other portion of our fusible link, which does tie in right here. It's not going to be a big deal to extend this. It's just going to be some extra wiring, so it's not that bad. And then this main starter relay here kind of ties in right here as well, so we could extend one of the wires, pull the rest of it back inside. So that's something we're going to tackle probably tomorrow. But for today, I wanted to show you guys some of the stuff that we were able to get done. So not only were we able to get the whole injector and top upper engine harness done, that's awesome. We also got our passenger side headlight and running light assembly thing done, so that harness is all complete. I mean, really, the one on the driver's side is going to be really easy to do, considering like it already does run over on the outside of the fender. The only thing that doesn't, which I'm going to try to work around, is the plug that plugs in on the bottom of our brake master cylinder reservoir. I'm going to try to get creative on how we get that kind of inside there, so we'll see what we can do with that. And then we're going to start fitting some grommets, start getting some things run. Very excited to then get the inside part of the harness in. That's going to require no modification at all. Really, the only mods we're doing to our harness are tucking the wires here that run up to the headlights and extending and isolating the engine harness and possibly the driver's side one as well, so it matches the passenger side one. This will be really cool too, so if you ever like have an issue where a headlight's not working or whatever, a turn signal is not working or it's flashing fast, you can go back through and isolate the harness and then see if it's in this section or if it's in this section, so that's going to be really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up some wiring this evening, but I wanted to make sure you guys had something out so you could see some of the work that we are getting done. So what I will do is we'll get this one posted, and then there'll be another video. It might pop up in the middle of the week this week, or possibly on Friday. That will be us finishing the rest of the harness and doing some shots of getting them installed. I also need to go ahead, after we install the harness, we're going to be running some of the air duct things for the dash, some of the frame for the dash. It'll be a lot easier to also put the dash in once we get everything done with no windshield and no doors. So that's ideally what I'd like to have done before we start actually assembling and prepping the rest of the stuff for the paint. This way we'll just mask it off. We don't have to worry about that. So that would be kind of cool. The upholstery video for the dash, or the dash repair video, probably won't come out until we start talking about the rest of the interior, but I might make it its own little video since it'll be kind of quick. We're just going to recover it, nothing crazy, kind of clean it up a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys had a great weekend, got out there and got some work done on those projects, and until the next video, peace.